I came home early and found my wife in our bed, with the man who would later destroy everything. What I uncovered next wasn't just betrayal, it was a plan I was never meant to survive. Hey folks, thanks for taking a moment to hear me out. I've been wrestling with something heavy on my mind lately. It's been nearly a year since my divorce went through, after my wife betrayed me in the worst way possible. No kids, no family nearby to lean on, it's just been me trying to put the pieces back together. The strange part, and maybe the most shameful, is that lately I've found myself obsessing over another man's wife. I'm not sure what to even call it. Love, longing, lust, obsession, or maybe just the urge to take what he has, the way he once took what was mine. There's a part of me that knows this craving has more to do with revenge than anything noble. I don't know her deeply, just casual encounters, mostly during lunch breaks. She works in the same office complex as I do, and over time I started noticing her more and more. Lately, I've been going out of my way to learn whatever I can about her. I've become almost consumed with the idea of getting close to her, of making her mine. But I keep asking myself, what then? Where does that path even lead? It's a twisted thing to feel so drawn to someone that you're willing to throw away your own conscience. But that's where I'm at. From what I've picked up, she's probably around 30, small frame, carries herself with a kind of quiet confidence. No kids, married to a guy who, frankly, seems like a complete waste. I've seen them together a few times and he just doesn't seem to notice how lucky he is. What makes it worse, what turns my stomach, is knowing that he is the guy my ex-wife was sleeping with behind my back. Yeah, he's the one who helped destroy my marriage. And now I keep telling myself that if I can get close to his wife, I'll be balancing the scales. In my mind, I twist it into some kind of justice. And maybe I'd be doing her a favor too. She deserves someone who actually sees her, right? To be honest with you all, I haven't really been the same since the day everything came crashing down. I remember it so clearly. It was a random afternoon. I came home early from work without any real reason, just a feeling. I walked in like any other day, not suspecting a thing, and headed straight to the bedroom to get changed. That's when it hit me like a punch to the chest. There she was, my wife, right in the middle of our bed, tangled up with some man. She saw me and let out this shriek while he kept going for a second, thinking he was some kind of champion. When he finally realized I was standing there, something in me snapped. I grabbed him, fists shaking, blood rushing in my ears, and yanked him off her. Tossed him to the floor like garbage. But I didn't stop there. I started swinging. I don't even remember how many times I hit him. I just saw red. My wife was screaming, crying, but I couldn't hear a word of it. In that moment, all I knew was pain, years of trust shattered in an instant. After I'd left him bruised and broken, I grabbed him by the arm and dragged him across the living room floor. He was barely dressed, stumbling and trying to cover himself, but I didn't care. I opened the front door and tossed him out onto the front lawn, not caring if the whole neighborhood saw. I stood there for a second, hoping that when I turned back around she'd be gone too. I didn't want to look at her, not after what I'd seen. And truthfully, if she hadn't left on her own, I would have made her leave. I meant what I said, cheating or not, I wouldn't let her stay in that house after what she did. Sure enough, when I stepped back inside, she was gone. Most of her personal stuff had vanished too. Clothes, jewelry, even her side of the bathroom was wiped clean. There was a note left on the kitchen counter. At first, I didn't even want to look at it. But curiosity, or maybe closure, got the better of me. It started with, "Dear Brian, that's me. I made a mistake. A terrible one. What happened with Mark didn't mean anything. He's just someone from my past. We were close once, long before you and I met. I never thought I'd see him again, let alone that anything would happen between us." I remember just staring at that piece of paper, reading it over and over, trying to make sense of what she was saying. She'd mentioned him before in passing, an old flame, someone from her college days. Back then, I didn't think much of it. She claimed he was soft, easily pushed around, always did whatever his girlfriend told him to do. She said he wasn't the kind of guy who would ever come knocking on her door again. But here we were. I called her not long after reading the letter, mostly out of rage. She answered and I could hear voices in the background, laughter, someone else on the line. Sounded like Amanda, her friend who never liked me. Then I heard Rachel's voice shout, "Brian, you son of a," and I hung up before she could get the words out. After that, I called my lawyer, explained everything, and had the divorce papers drawn up. I didn't want anything more to do with her. Since we'd been renting the house and each had our own car, there wasn't much to divide up aside from our modest savings. I made sure she walked away with nothing more than her toothbrush and that memory of what she did to me. And to be honest, she didn't put up much of a fight. Maybe deep down she knew she didn't have a leg to stand on. In the weeks that followed, I kept mostly to myself. People talk in a small town, rumors travel fast, and it wasn't long before everyone knew what happened. One of the few people who reached out was Jenna. I'd known her for a while, but we'd never been close. More like casual neighbors who'd say hi in the grocery store or make small talk at the gas station. One afternoon she came into the diner alone during lunch. I saw her sitting by herself and, on a whim, asked if she wanted to join me. I was tired of eating in silence and I figured a little company wouldn't hurt. At first she looked hesitant, probably wondering what I was up to, but I promised her it was just lunch. Nothing more. We ended up talking about simple stuff. Her kids, her husband's recent promotion, the kind of things that feel normal when everything else in your world feels flipped upside down. A few days later, I asked her if she'd want to grab a coffee after work. And that's where things started to shift. What I needed more than anything was a chance to talk to Jenna somewhere quiet. Just the two of us, no interruptions, no eyes watching. I needed her to trust me enough to open up. But when I asked her if she'd come by my apartment so we could talk privately, she hesitated. "Brian, I can't come to your place," she said gently. "You know how that would look. What would people say?" For a second I thought about Rachel. Why hadn't she ever shown this kind of thoughtfulness? Why hadn't she cared what her actions looked like, or how they'd affect me? "Jenna," I said, trying to steady my voice, "this isn't about anything physical. I just really need to talk to you, face to face. I care about you more than you know, and I feel like you deserve to hear something I've been holding on to. Please." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then she said, "I believe you, Brian. I really do like you, but I still don't know you well enough to be alone with you like that." I understood. Truly I did. But I also knew this conversation couldn't wait. So I asked if she'd meet me somewhere quiet instead, someplace where we could talk without distractions. When we met later that evening, I told her the name of the man Rachel had cheated with, Mark. That's all I'd known for a long time. Just his name. And then, with a deep breath, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out something I hadn't shown anyone since the day I found it. The letter Rachel had left me. For some reason I couldn't explain, I'd kept it all this time. I handed it to Jenna. She read it slowly, her eyes welling up as she moved through the lines. I watched the emotions shift across her face. Confusion, sadness, realization. And then, silence. I told her the truth then. I told her how, for the last 6 months, I'd been going to the same lunch spot every day just to see her. How she became the one bright spot in my life when everything else felt gray and lifeless. I didn't know her well, not back then, but something about her drew me in. Something real. And even though I knew nothing about her life, I found myself falling little by little, completely unaware that she was married. I never made a move. I never approached because it didn't feel right. Until now. The next day, I rushed to the restaurant hoping to see her again, eager to pick up where we left off. But Jenna never came. She didn't walk through those doors, didn't take her usual seat. My heart sank. All kinds of questions flooded my mind. Had she talked to her husband? Had things gone terribly wrong? Was she okay? I couldn't focus on anything else that entire day. My thoughts circled endlessly around her, trying to figure out if I should call or wait. Every passing hour felt like a year. That evening my phone finally rang. Her name lit up the screen. My heart jumped. "Brian," she said, her voice trembling, "I need to see you. I know I said I wouldn't come to your place, but things have changed." She sounded shaken. I told her she was always welcome, and not long after she showed up. She sat down, took a breath and said, "He lied to me, Brian. All this time I thought he was transferred here by his company. That's what he told me. But the truth is, he asked to come here. This is where he grew up. This is his old town." I stayed quiet, letting her speak. The truth was unraveling fast. "I didn't think much of it at the time," she continued. "I just assumed he wanted to be close to home. I loved him, so I went along with it. I believed everything he told me." Then she looked up at me and asked, "Did Rachel go to a class reunion about a year and a half ago? And did you go with her?" I nodded slowly. "No. That weekend I had a family event I couldn't miss." She went alone. Jenna stared at the floor, her hands clenched. "That's when it started," she said quietly. "That reunion weekend, I skipped it because it fell on my mom's birthday. I figured Rachel would be better off going alone anyway, less chance of old relationship gossip coming out and complicating things. At the time, I was trying to protect her, or so I thought. Looking back, I realized that might have been the very opening Mark needed. I turned to Jenna and asked, "Where do you stand in all of this? I mean, it's one thing for me to want justice, but you're still married to him." She took a breath and looked away for a moment before saying, "Right now, Brian, it's pride more than anything. What he did, it wasn't just betrayal, it was public humiliation. I want to make him pay for that. I want to take everything he holds dear. I want him to feel small, exposed, ashamed. I nodded, silently understanding every word. But, she added, her voice softer, I don't want to lose my dignity in the process. I want to walk away with my head held high. And maybe, hopefully still have you by my side. That hit me harder than I expected. The truth is, I'd been caught in this storm of emotion, trying to figure out how to deal with the damage left behind. For a long time, revenge had been the only thing keeping me going. But now that Jenna was part of this, everything felt different. Turns out, Jenna hadn't been passive in all this. For weeks, she'd suspected something and quietly began gathering evidence. One of her close friends had started trailing Mark, snapping photos, jotting down notes, even logging where he'd been and who he was with. I started learning things about Jenna I hadn't known. Everyone at her workplace adored her. The secretaries all called her when they had computer issues. She never talked down to them, always patient, always willing to help. It was no wonder they rallied behind her. They saw her strength and grace even when she was being deceived. That made things harder for me. I started questioning whether revenge was even the right path anymore. I couldn't bring myself to use Jenna as part of a scheme. She meant more to me than that. But Jenna wasn't backing down. I found the place, she said one night. A cheap hotel, the kind that rents rooms by the hour. Fitting, really? Mark used to act like he was some kind of romantic, but the way he treated me, and the way he sleeps around? He could have saved a fortune renting by the quarter hour. She gave a dry laugh and pulled out a folded paper. I booked the same room for Wednesday morning. You're going to help me set up a hidden camera. We'll catch him red-handed. I hesitated. She continued, while I'm getting the room ready, I want you to meet with my lawyer, Sally Hawk. She's ruthless, doesn't miss a single detail. She's already drawn up a draft of the divorce papers. All we need is the footage and this thing is locked. I had to admit, Sally was impressive. She'd handled messy cases for years and apparently, our little plan had her more excited than most. She even said half-jokingly, you two have sent more business my way than my billboard. To top it off, Jenna had even brought in a guy named Big Louie, some sort of private security muscle. We gave him his cut up front, and promised him an extra $500 if everything played out smoothly. This thing was happening. The trap was being set. And somehow, for the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. When I handed the motel clerk my ID and some cash, he didn't even blink. Just gave me a tired smile and said, no problem. I reserved the room for that Wednesday afternoon just like we'd planned. He mentioned we had to be out by 4 p.m. sharp. Someone else had already booked it for later. That gave us just enough time to get everything in place. I met up with Jenna later that morning. She looked a little tense but focused. Big Louie had called her earlier, reassuring her that he'd take care of the protection side of things. No one's gonna touch you, he told her. You got my word. That seemed to give her a little comfort. She thanked him for being so decent to her through all this. And Big Louie, for all his size and reputation, gave her a kind nod that actually felt genuine. We timed it carefully. Louie and his crew would arrive around 5:15 p.m., just enough time for Mark to settle in and let his guard down. Earlier that afternoon, Jenna had done what she did best, used her computer skills to set the trap in motion. She crafted a short but suggestive email addressed to both Mark and Rachel. It simply read, Sweetheart, I've got something special planned for you tonight. Just walk in and don't ask any questions. Trust me, you're in for a surprise. Just go with it. That was all it took. From our hidden setup, we watched the monitor. There they were, Mark and Rachel, walking in side by side, laughing like teenagers sneaking away from their lives. And then, the door burst open. Jenna stood there, fire in her eyes, voice like thunder. You lying, spineless coward, she yelled, not holding back a single word. You're a disgrace. A worthless piece of... She didn't even finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Rachel looked like she'd seen a ghost. Mark was frozen in place, his mouth slightly open, still trying to process what was happening. I want a divorce, Jenna said firmly. And I want it now. Then she turned on Mark, her voice shaking but strong. Why, Mark? Why wasn't I enough for you? I knew something was going on. I hoped, foolishly, that maybe it was just a phase. Something you'd eventually leave behind. But you kept lying, sneaking off, hurting me. I'm done. We're done. She turned on her heel and started for the door. Rachel stammered, Jenna, wait. But Jenna cut her off. Save it. Both of you. You'll hear from my lawyer. As we were about to walk out, Mark finally spoke. Wait, he called after her. I'll sign the divorce papers, but only if I get the tape. Jenna didn't flinch. She looked at Big Louie, who nodded. She pulled the tape from her bag and handed it to him. "You'll get this after Sally and I leave," she said coolly. Not a second before. She also gave Louie a sealed envelope. "His bonus," she whispered. "He earned it." Sally turned to Mark, her legal voice cutting through the room like a blade. "This document is final and irrevocable. If you have any questions, contact my office. You are not to speak to Jenna again. Any attempt to harass her and I will have you arrested. Do you understand?" He nodded without a word. We left together, Jenna walking with her head high. I felt proud of her, but inside, a wave of sadness rolled over me. She'd finally stood up for herself. She got the closure she deserved. And somehow, seeing that made me feel lonelier than ever. That night, back at my place, I sat quietly for a long time. I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. I thought about everything that had led to this point, about Rachel, Mark, about how two broken people had unknowingly found strength in each other. The next morning, I went into work and asked my boss if the temporary job in Chicago was still available. He said yes, and without hesitation, I told him I'd be leaving Friday. I needed distance. A new chapter. I genuinely wished the best for Jenna. She deserved peace, happiness, everything that had been denied to her while she was stuck in that toxic marriage. She was one of the kindest, most genuine people I'd ever met. And while she had managed to reclaim her strength and dignity, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been left behind, emotionally stranded. Helping her through the whole ordeal had meant more to me than I ever expected. Somewhere in the middle of the chaos, I realized I had fallen for her. I just never told her. When I arrived in Chicago, I dove straight into work. I threw every ounce of energy I had into launching a new brokerage firm, building it from the ground up. The hours were long, the nights quiet, but it gave me something to focus on, something that didn't carry the sting of betrayal. Still, no matter how busy I kept myself, thoughts of Jenna crept in. After some time passed, I went back to visit the town where it all started. I decided to stop by the little restaurant where we used to meet for lunch. It felt like stepping into a memory. That's when I ran into Marcia, a mutual acquaintance who spotted me almost immediately and walked over with a big smile. She gave me a warm hug and said, well, look who's back in town." We caught up briefly, and naturally the topic of Jenna came up. Marcia told me Jenna had taken the divorce harder than most people realized. She had turned down every date that came her way, burying herself in work, looking quieter, more withdrawn than she used to be. "Everyone here still loves her," Marcia said gently. "We just hope she finds someone who really sees her worth, especially after everything she went through." I asked if Jenna was working that day. Marcia smiled and said, "Nope. Day off. But if I know her, she's probably curled up with a book somewhere." I decided to take a chance. I stopped by her place. When she opened the door, her eyes widened with surprise. "No pizza?" she said playfully. "Sorry to disappoint you," I laughed. "Just me." I stepped inside and pulled her into a tight hug. I didn't realize how much I'd missed her until I had her in my arms again. "I missed you, Jenna," I said quietly. "More than I can even say." She looked like she was about to speak when the doorbell rang again. This time it was the actual pizza guy with my order. I quickly paid and brought the food in. "You hungry?" I asked. "I've got pizza and beer." She gave me that old, familiar smile. "You really are a funny guy, Brian." We sat down and ate like old times, the tension melting away. We talked late into the night about everything, our lives, the chaos we'd been through, the silence in between. Then I asked her the question I hadn't planned on asking. "Jenna, when do you want to get married?" She didn't hesitate. "As soon as we can." By then it was pushing 10 p.m. I picked up my phone and called Sally Hawk. When she answered, slightly groggy, I said, "Sally, I know this is unexpected, but can you help us get married tomorrow?" She chuckled, already halfway on board. "Brian, if anyone deserves a happy ending, it's you too. I'll make it happen." "Sally, Jenna and I want to get married as soon as possible," I told her over the phone. "But tomorrow's Christmas Eve. We need a judge who's willing to officiate. Do you know anyone?" She laughed lightly. "You two are unbelievable." Actually, Jenna already called me this morning. She's one step ahead of you, Brian. Sally made a few calls, and within a few hours she found someone, Judge Robert Whitman. He and his wife Karen had agreed to meet us for a private ceremony in their home the next day. We were beyond grateful. On Christmas Eve, we arrived at their cozy little house, tucked away on a quiet street, warm lights glowing through the windows. Judge Whitman welcomed us at the door with a smile. "I'm Bob," he said, offering his hand. Jenna, radiant as ever, returned his smile. "Glad to meet you, Bob." "And Karen?" she said, turning to his wife. Then she paused, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "Karen, didn't we meet at Robson's restaurant on Old Route 40 a couple of months ago?" Before Karen could respond, Bob chuckled and shook his head. No, that place is too fancy for us." But Karen didn't laugh. Her face went pale for a split second. "Nice meeting you both," she said quickly. "We need to get back to our seats." It was subtle, but Jenna and I exchanged a knowing glance. We had a pretty good idea that Karen had just recognized us too, likely from Mark and Rachel's circle. We figured she'd be quick to run and tell them what she'd seen, the two of us together getting married. Let them talk. We had nothing to hide. Later that evening, I couldn't help but reflect on everything. There's a certain thrill in being with someone who truly understands you, not just the good parts but the broken ones too. Someone who's seen you at your worst and still chooses to be by your side. That kind of connection, it's rare. And when it comes along, it changes you. I'd once been drawn to that thrill for the wrong reasons. The chase, the fantasy, the idea of reclaiming something stolen. But what Jenna and I had, that was different. It wasn't built on revenge. It came from surviving something together. That night, as we sat side by side in the car, our hands intertwined, I thought back to a moment from earlier that week. Mike, one of my coworkers in Chicago, had been showing me a new dashcam feature. He pulled up a video on his tablet, smiling like a kid with a new toy. "Now check this out," he said. The footage zoomed in on a car in a mall parking lot, just some couple making out in the front seat. But then, the camera caught her face. My heart dropped. It was Trina, another person from my past. Someone I had trusted. There she was, eyes closed, leaning in toward someone who clearly wasn't her husband. A sick wave of déjà vu crashed over me. "Hey Mike," I said quickly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I gotta get back to the office before it closes. Can you email me that file? I might want to show it to the guys." He nodded, not thinking anything of it. On the drive back, I realized something. That old part of me, the one that burned with betrayal and wanted nothing more than revenge, was starting to fade. I had Jenna now. And I had peace. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It just meant choosing to move forward, without letting the past poison what came next. I wasn't going to run anymore. And I wasn't going to yell or plead or argue. I was done with all of that. That night, after a long day, I stepped into the shower, trying to wash away more than just the physical exhaustion. I needed a moment of silence, of stillness. But then I felt her. Trina stepped in behind me, gently placed her hands on my back, and after a moment, reached around to take my hand in hers. Her voice was soft, searching. "Are you going to tell me what's been eating at you?" I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I just stood there, letting the water run down, giving her nothing. I knew that silence cut deep. But I had no more pieces left to give her. The next day, I took a step I never thought I'd have to take. I cleared out the spare bedroom, the one we used to joke would be a nursery someday, and moved in. That became my new routine. Go to work, come home, shut the door behind me. Trina kept trying to carry on like we were still a couple, still living in the same world. But to me, it was just her continuing a marriage that I no longer felt part of. One evening, she followed me into the hallway, her voice trembling. "You keep saying our marriage like it means nothing now." I stopped and looked at her. "No, Trina," I said, my tone like ice. "It stopped being ours the moment you made a choice to be with someone else. We had a promise. To stay faithful, to be honest. You never even talked to me about what you were feeling. You just decided." She stood there stunned. "You didn't try to fix it. You didn't ask for help. You didn't renegotiate anything. You broke the terms and expected me to live with it like nothing changed." She backed away slightly, folding her arms around herself like a shield. Her voice broke as she whispered, "How can you be so cold? Do you really hate me that much?" I looked at her, and for the first time I didn't feel anger. "No, Trina. I don't hate you," I said, my voice softening. "But I can't keep pretending that we're still the same." Then came a curveball I didn't expect. She showed me a health report, said she'd gotten tested. She had checked everything out before I could even ask. "I wanted to be sure," she said, hesitating. "All the results are negative. It only happened once. I didn't want you to find out that way, but I'll get tested again if you want." That stopped me. I knew Trina. As much as I didn't want to admit it, I believed her. It hadn't been some long affair. It had been a single devastating lapse in judgment. A mistake. But mistakes still come with consequences. I didn't know if forgiveness was possible. I didn't even know what forgiveness looked like at that point. But for the first time in weeks, something shifted between us. Not a full mending. Just something human. As I turned to leave the room, she spoke again, barely above a whisper. Can I ask you one more favor? I paused. What is it? Would you hold me tonight? I looked at her, so small, so broken, and without thinking I lifted my arm. She slid under it and melted against me, her breath shaky against my chest. We didn't speak. We just held on like people lost in the wreckage waiting for the morning. When the sun came up, we were still tangled together, not in romance but in quiet resignation. Later that morning we headed to the hospital. On the drive there, Trina gently asked her mother, "Can Brian and I have a few minutes alone with Bill?" I didn't ask why. I just knew something was coming that neither of us were ready for. Trina's mom looked confused when she heard the request, but she didn't argue. Of course, she said softly, stepping back. When we got to the hospital room, Bill was already awake. His eyes tracked us the second we walked in. He sat up straighter and said with a bit of a smirk, "All right. What's this all about?" "Nothing," Trina said quickly. "We just wanted to see you." He raised an eyebrow. "Don't try to play games with me, Trina. I wasn't born yesterday." It was classic Bill, sharp, always a little suspicious. But something in his tone told me he wasn't angry. He was just trying to read between the lines like he always did. Later that afternoon I ran into George. He was one of those laid-back surfer types, shaggy hair, tan skin, a few years older than me. The kind of guy who looked like he belonged more on a beach than in our part of the world. You couldn't miss him, or his twin brothers. They all looked nearly identical. "Hey Dan, how's it going?" he said, waving as I walked up. "Hey George. Not bad." He looked at me, tone shifting slightly. "So, Trina mentioned to Lisa that you guys have been going through some stuff." "Yeah," I said carefully. "We're working on it. It's complicated." George nodded, genuine concern in his eyes. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry, man. I didn't know anything about it, but I hope everything works out." "Thanks," I said, not sure what else to offer. "We're taking it one step at a time." As I headed back inside, something about the conversation stuck with me. George wasn't nosy by nature. That little exchange had weight behind it. Maybe Lisa had said more to him than she should have. Or maybe it was just the small-town grapevine doing what it always did, spreading whispers faster than anyone could stop them. Later that night, Dan asked Trina quietly, "Have you two worked things out?" She looked at him with that practiced calm she always had around her family. "I think so," she said, "but can we talk after dinner? I've got a lot on my plate today." So I stayed out of the way, trying to keep myself busy, running errands, fixing odds and ends. Time moved slower than usual. Every minute felt stretched out, like the universe was forcing me to sit in the weight of everything. That evening, though, it felt different. Like a first date. There was nervous energy in the air. Trina looked stunning. Her hair and nails were freshly done, and she was wearing one of those dresses she used to save for special occasions. It was like she was trying to rewind the clock, to take us back to a version of ourselves we'd both missed. She made my favorite dinner. The table was set. Music low in the background. Everything was perfect. But I wasn't. After dinner, I took a long breath and told her gently, "I still need time. I want to be close again, I really do, but I'm not there yet. What happened, it's still in my head." She didn't say anything at first. Then she started to cry, quietly, not begging or dramatic, just soft, wounded tears. But I couldn't move. I felt frozen. Maybe she thought the inheritance would change things. Maybe she hoped that a new beginning wrapped in a financial windfall would fix what had been broken. But I wasn't here for money. I was here for something deeper. Something that couldn't be bought back. That night, we lay beside each other in silence. No false promises. No pretending. Just two people trying to understand if what they had could be salvaged. The next morning at breakfast, things were different again. We sat together, holding hands. Trina was glowing. She talked to me with a kind of excitement I hadn't seen in a long time, like I was an old friend who had come back into her life after years apart. I listened, but my heart was cautious. Part of me was still watching from a distance. And in that quiet, honest place in my heart, I had to admit it. I didn't want to be a fool again. "What do you get out of this?" I asked her, voice low but steady. "Is it just a game to you? Do you enjoy watching me fall apart?" Trina didn't blink. "You've got everything, don't you?" I continued. "The career, the image, the money. So why stay with me if you don't love me? Why not just walk away?" There was a pause before she answered, and when she did, her voice was colder than I expected. "So, you know about the others?" I nodded. "You told me, Trina. But knowing isn't the same as understanding. I still don't get it." "What?" Why was it worth so little to you? Why did you have to play with my heart like that? She stood up, took a few slow steps away, then turned back toward me. You want honesty? She said, voice sharp. Fine. I wanted to feel something. I wanted to be wanted. You weren't there. You were around but not present. You stopped seeing me. That doesn't explain it, I replied, struggling to keep my composure. That doesn't justify betrayal. No, she admitted. But it's the truth. Before I could respond, she added, and I'm not the only one who knows. Jenna doesn't, right? She thinks you're perfect? Well, maybe she deserves to know the real story. I turned and started walking away, trying to calm myself down, but then I heard George's voice from behind me. Quiet, smug. If you two weren't having issues, maybe she wouldn't have gone looking elsewhere. That was it. I spun around and grabbed him by that mess of shaggy hair. My fist hit him hard, square in the gut. He dropped to his knees, gasping for air, and I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked away, the adrenaline burning in my chest. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel regret either. Just numb. Later that night, I ended up at the clinic, somehow needing space, clarity, anything. Donna was working late. She offered to check me out after I mentioned feeling off. What I didn't expect was how that moment would shift. She gently pulled a stool over, close to me, closer than I expected. The air between us changed. This wasn't clinical anymore. It wasn't cold or professional. It felt human. She placed her hand on mine and sat next to me, half undressed, her eyes searching mine. I didn't push away. I didn't stop it. And even though I knew it was wrong, so clearly, painfully wrong, I felt no remorse. I should have felt guilt. I should have stopped myself. But I didn't. Not in that moment. When it was over, we sat there quietly. I spoke first. Do you think this will fix anything? She didn't answer. And deep down I knew it wouldn't. But it wasn't about fixing. It was about needing to feel something again. The only thing that remained after that night was the ache behind my eyes, the weight in my chest. I didn't know what I was doing or where I was going anymore. For a second I even considered walking away from it all, starting over somewhere new. But that wasn't me. Not really. I needed to understand what went wrong. I needed answers. That became my new mission. Not revenge. Not escape. Just clarity. And the truth? If you really want to know what happened, what broke us, you'd have to ask Trina. She's the only one who ever really knew why. Don't you think I've already asked myself all of this? I said. But Daniel, she's lying. Right to my face. If I believed her, he replied carefully, everything between you two would seem perfectly fine. But I know better. He paused, looking genuinely torn. I'm sorry, Brian. But things are complicated. You'll have to ask Trina. I can't speak for her. Then he straightened up, his tone shifting. Listen, young man. With Bill gone, it falls on me now. I'm the head of this family, whether I wanted it or not. There's a lot at stake, and it's my responsibility to make sure the terms of Bill's will are followed exactly. That hit harder than I expected. This wasn't just about feelings anymore. It was about legacy, power, and money. Saturday came, and with it, the cold finality of moving out. I packed everything I had gathered over the last 12 years, every memory, every photo, every piece of a life I had once believed in. I left behind anything that reminded me of Trina. That chapter, painful as it was finished. All of it, the marriage, the promises, the illusion, it now felt like a carefully constructed lie. 12 years of loyalty, love, and commitment. And all along, she'd known about the trust her grandmother had whispered about. That old money that somehow managed to control everything in her life, including who she married, and how long she stayed married. It was never really about us. Later, Frank stormed out after one of our more heated exchanges. I hoped the message got through to him, though I doubted Trina would ever really hear me. At 1 p.m. sharp, I walked into my lawyer's office with Trina's journal under my arm. I had no idea what the outcome would be, but I knew I was done playing the fool. Inside the conference room sat 3 attorneys. The probate lawyer started explaining the fine print in the trust. It was all there. Trina had to be married by her 24th birthday. And that marriage had to last at least 1 day past her 36th, which, conveniently, was about 18 months away. And to satisfy the final condition? There had to be a child born during the marriage. We took our seats. Trina walked in with her legal team, same as before. Only this time I noticed a change. There was tension in the air. Maybe they finally realized this wasn't going to be so easy to manipulate. Trina leaned forward, her voice softer than I'd heard in a long time. Dan, I hope you'll reconsider. Then she delivered her trump card. As you can see, we're going to have a baby. I didn't flinch. Nice try, Trina, I said. What else do you have? She blinked, taken aback. If you're still set on going through with the divorce, I'm willing to make you an offer. What kind of offer? I asked, already exhausted. If you'll delay it, just for a while. About 16 months. There it was. The real reason. Not love. Not reconciliation. Just time. Enough time to keep the trust fund alive. I leaned back in my chair, everything suddenly so clear. This had never been about us.